Let's go ahead and come up with a code that combines the input function, the display function, as well as the fprintf function together and create a table. In this case, we want to create a table that takes degrees and converts it into radians. Okay, so let's go ahead and do script file. I'm going to say a script file. Okay, that creates a table of degrees to radians. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to prompt a user to do degree start, and I'm going to say input, and we're going to prompt the user what starting degree value would you like. Okay, and then just do that, and then we're going to say degree final and or degree end, either one, and then I'm going to just say, I'm just going to copy this guy, what ending degree value would you like. Okay, and then I'm going to define increment, and then we're going to ask the user what increments they would like. What increment would you like? Okay, so all these are prompting the user, so user controlled input, and then based on what the user inputs, I'm going to put a semicolon here for all of these, and based on what the user inputs, we're going to define, using the colon operator, a variable called degree, and it's going to be based on my deg start value colon increment colon deg end value, and all these values are going to be user controlled or user inputted. Okay, based on that, I'm going to come up with a formula for radians, and I'm going to say, okay, well, radians we know is just our degrees times pi divided by 180. Okay, so now we're doing our conversion factor there, and once we do the conversion factor, I'm going to make a variable table, and I'm just going to say, well, my input value is degrees semicolon radians is going to be one variable that's going to have both these data in there. And now I'm going to use the display function to make a header, a table of degrees, and I can do another one that actually put headers of actually degrees and radians to radians, and it's up to you how you want to put this. Essentially, we're going to, let me go ahead and maximize this here a little bit. So we got display, so we used the input function. We took those data to use the colon operator to input that in there, make sure I didn't have any errors. I'm converting that. I'm creating a table with both the input degrees and the output radians that we computed. I'm going to use the display to give it a header, a table of degrees to radians, and now we're going to use fprintf, and we're going to say it's going to give us 4 point. I'm going to put 4 point, so 4 spaces with 2 decimals, floating point, and then the second data, which is going to be my radians. The first one's going to be my degrees. The second one's going to be 6 spaces allocated with 4 decimal points and its floating point. And I'm just going to give it a couple spaces there, and I'm going to say new line each time, and make sure you put that new line character there, and then comma, and then the variable table that it's going to point to. And then let's go ahead and run this. So let me show you what happens here. So I'm going to run it. So it's going to ask me what starting degree value I would like, I'm going to say 0. What ending value? I'm going to say 180 degrees. What's my increment? Let's just say I want to do 20 degree increments. Okay, so that's what so this is what happens. So it prompted me as to do user controlled input. So I gave it 0 as my starting value, 180 as my final, incrementing of 20, and then the display gives me a table of degrees to radians, and now the fprintf gives me this formatted 0 to 20 degrees, and then these are the radians. Now I could have done something else. I could have gone in here and said, okay, well, I don't want to say a table of degrees to radians. Maybe I just want to say degrees and radians. Okay, maybe I just want to say degrees and radians. Okay, so let's go ahead and clear our screen. Let's see if I can do this here. Okay, so now we have degrees lining up with my first column, radians lining up with my other column. If I want to make this a little more lined up, I can go in here and just do a couple spaces like that. And then I'm going to do CLC, and then let's see how this looks like. Okay, so this looks a little cleaner, you know, so degrees is coming up here, radians is coming up here. Maybe we don't need 4 units here. Maybe we don't need 4. Maybe we can just put 7 here. So again, this is the nice thing about fprintf. You can format your table the way you like, and you can maybe say I don't want 4 here. Maybe I want 3. I'm gonna run it again, and so you play around with. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. You play around with formatting, and until you come up with a nice little table that you like. The reason why it's shifted here is because these numbers here. So what I can do is I can give this 8 spaces, and now you see everything's shifted. It looks like it's more aligned, and then I can go in here and just give it a couple more spaces here, and you can play around with it. So now you've come up with a table with degrees and radians, and of course you can take these and output them into a file if you'd like to, or just output them to a screen. And so this is the nice thing about using user controlled input output. You can ask the user to input some data. You can use the input function, the display function, as well as the fprintf function, and that's essentially the content of this chapter. If you understand this, then you can do a lot of things with this. Okay.